I want to tell you about a woman named Carol, 72 years old, retired schoolteacher, sharp her whole life. The kind of woman who did the crossword in pen. 3 years ago, she started forgetting things. Small things at first. Names, appointments, where she left her keys. She went to her doctor. He ran tests. He told her it was normal aging. She accepted it. What nobody told Carol, what nobody thought to ask, was what she was eating every single morning for breakfast. Same thing for 30 years. Something that sat in her kitchen looking completely harmless. Something that researchers now link directly to accelerated brain aging. When she changed it, things changed. My name is Jade, and today I'm going to show you 5 foods that are quietly damaging the brain after 60. And then, because this is not just about fear, 5 foods that research shows can actively rebuild it. 10 foods, 2 lists. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what to remove and exactly what to add. Starting tonight. Stay with me. Before we get to the lists, I need to tell you something your doctor probably hasn't explained. After 60, food affects your brain differently than it did at 40. Here is why. Think of your brain's blood supply like a network of garden hoses. When you are young, those hoses are flexible. They absorb pressure. They handle whatever flows through them. But after 60, the walls of those vessels start to stiffen. They become more rigid, more vulnerable. Now pour something inflammatory through a rigid pipe every day for years. What happens? The pipe degrades faster. The flow slows. The tissue it feeds, in this case your brain, starts to suffer. That is what chronic dietary inflammation does to the aging brain. Day after day, meal after meal, quietly, without symptoms, until something changes that can no longer be ignored. Here is the part that frustrates me most about this. The foods causing the most damage are often the ones people have been told for decades are fine or even healthy. That gap between what the research now shows and what most people still believe is exactly what today is about. Let me ask you something before we start. Think about what you ate yesterday. Not your worst day, yesterday, a typical day. Hold that in your mind as we go through these lists, because I think at least 2 or 3 of the foods we discussed today are going to land close to home. And that is not a reason to panic. That is a reason to pay attention. Ready? Let's go. Starting with the one that surprises people the most. Food 1. Refined vegetable oils. Go to your kitchen right now. Look at the oils on your counter or in your cupboard. Canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil. These are in almost every home in America. They are marketed as heart-healthy. They replaced butter in the 1970s and 80s when saturated fat was declared the enemy. Here is the problem. These oils are extraordinarily high in omega-6 fatty acids. Your body needs some omega-6. The issue is the ratio. For most of human history, people consumed roughly equal amounts of omega-3 and omega-6. Today, the average person consumes 15 to 20 times more omega-6 than omega-3. 15 to 20 times. That extreme imbalance drives something your brain cannot afford. Chronic, systemic inflammation. The slow-burning, silent kind. The kind that stiffens blood vessels and accelerates the damage associated with cognitive decline. But there's something worse than the inflammation. These oils are unstable at cooking temperatures. When you heat canola oil in a pan, it oxidizes. It breaks down into compounds called aldehydes. Aldehydes are directly toxic to brain cells. You cannot see it happening. The food does not taste different, but the damage accumulates with every meal. I had a patient, I'll call him Frank, retired chef, cooked with vegetable oil his entire career. Switched to olive oil at 68 after reading the research. He called me 6 months later and said something that stayed with me. He said, "I feel like someone turned the lights back on." Does this sound like something in your kitchen? The fix is simple. Replace refined vegetable oils with extra virgin olive oil for most cooking. For high heat, real butter from grass-fed cows. That single swap, made consistently, is one of the most impactful changes you can make for your brain. Food 2. Ultra-processed breakfast cereals. This is Carol's food, the one nobody suspected. Think about the breakfast cereals lining supermarket shelves: cornflakes, Rice Krispies, bran flakes, honey-coated granola. They look nutritious. The packaging says so. Some of them have been fortified with vitamins and marketed specifically to older adults. Here is what they actually are: refined carbohydrates that have been stripped of fiber, processed at high heat, shaped into flakes or rings, and then coated in sugar or corn syrup. When you eat them, your blood sugar spikes sharply within 30 minutes. Now think about what a blood sugar spike does to your brain. It triggers a flood of insulin. That insulin surge causes inflammation. In the brain's blood vessels specifically, repeated blood sugar spikes, morning after morning, year after year, damage the tiny capillaries that keep brain tissue fed and oxygenated. Researchers have a name for this pattern. They call it type 3 diabetes. Some call it brain diabetes. The metabolic damage that results from chronic blood sugar dysregulation is now one of the most studied mechanisms in Alzheimer's research. Let me ask you this: what did you eat for breakfast this morning? If it came in a cardboard box with a cartoon on the front, this section is about you. Carol switched to eggs, berries, and a handful of walnuts. Within 3 months, she described something she had not felt in years: mental clarity in the mornings. Not perfect, but real and unmistakable. The fog was there for so long, she told me, that I stopped noticing it. Food 3. Processed meats: bacon, sausage, deli ham, salami, hot dogs, packaged lunch meats. These foods share 3 things in common. They are preserved with nitrates. They are extremely high in sodium. And they are associated, across multiple large studies, with significantly elevated risk of cognitive decline. Here is the mechanism. Nitrates, used to preserve color and extend shelf life, convert in the body to nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are toxic to brain cells. They damage mitochondria. That is the energy system inside each cell. When the mitochondria in brain cells are damaged, the cells produce less energy. They function poorly. They die faster. At the same time, the sodium load in processed meats contributes directly to arterial stiffening, and we already talked about what stiff arteries do to the brain. A study from the American Academy of Neurology found that people who consumed the highest amounts of ultra-processed foods, including processed meats, had cognitive decline rates 28% faster than those who ate the least. 28% faster. Not a marginal difference. A cliff. I know what some of you are thinking. It is one rasher of bacon. It is a few slices of ham. That is not a problem. But here is the reality. Habits are daily. The accumulation of a daily habit over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, that is what brain scans catch eventually. Not the single slice, the pattern. Food 4. Margarine and spreads containing trans fats. This one is important because it involves a direct betrayal. For decades, margarine was the healthy choice. Butter was the villain. Doctors recommended it. Dietitians recommended it. Cardiologists recommended it. Millions of people switched, believing they were doing the right thing for their heart and their brain. The research tells a different story. Margarine contains partially hydrogenated vegetable oils. Those are trans fats. Trans fats do something specific and measurable to the brain. They replace healthy fats in the cell membranes of neurons. A neuron's membrane needs to be flexible, fluid enough for signals to pass through efficiently. Trans fats make those membranes rigid. Signal transmission slows. Communication between brain regions degrades. A study from Neurology, one of the most respected journals in the field, found that people with the highest blood levels of ellatic acid, the main trans fat in margarine, had significantly higher rates of all-cause dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Check your spread at home tonight. If it says partially hydrogenated anywhere on the label, it is harming your brain. Put it in the bin. Real butter, in reasonable amounts, is safer. Extra virgin olive oil is better still. Food 5. Sugary drinks. including the ones marketed as healthy. This is the one that gets the most pushback because people love their orange juice. Let me tell you exactly what happens in your brain within 30 minutes of drinking a glass of commercial orange juice. Your blood sugar spikes. Sharply. More sharply than eating a whole orange because the fiber that would slow absorption has been removed. Your pancreas releases insulin. That insulin surge triggers an inflammatory response in blood vessels throughout your body, including the tiny blood vessels in your brain. Now repeat that every morning for 10 years. This applies to orange juice, apple juice, sports drinks, flavored waters with added sugar, so-called health smoothies with multiple fruit juices blended together, and obviously sodas, regular and diet. Diet sodas carry their own research linking artificial sweeteners to gut microbiome disruption and, through the gut-brain axis, to neuroinflammation. Water, unsweetened tea, black coffee in moderation. These are what the research supports for daily hydration. I know that is not what most people want to hear, but I would rather tell you the truth than tell you what feels comfortable. Have you had a juice or a sweetened drink today? Think about how often that happens. That is 5 foods. 5 things working against your brain right now. But here is where this video changes direction completely. Because this is not just a list of things to avoid. The brain is not a fixed, fragile object. It is responsive. It adapts. Give it the right raw materials, and it will use them. These 5 foods are backed by some of the strongest nutritional neuroscience available. They are not expensive. They are not exotic. They are in most supermarkets right now. Food 6. Fatty fish. Salmon, sardines, mackerel, anchovies, herring. Think of your brain's neurons like electrical wires. Every wire needs insulation to carry the signal efficiently. That insulation, the myelin sheath, is made largely from fat, specifically from omega-3 fatty acids called DHA and EPA. Your brain cannot manufacture DHA on its own. It has to come from food. And the richest food source by far is fatty fish. DHA makes up about 30% of the fat in the brain's gray matter. When DHA levels are low, and in most Western diets they are chronically low, neuronal membranes become less fluid, signal transmission slows, memory consolidation suffers. A study from Harvard Medical School found that adults who ate fish twice a week had significantly more gray matter volume in regions associated with memory and cognition than those who rarely ate it. More gray matter. Measurable on a scan, from food. 2 servings a week. That is the target. Baked, grilled, or in a tin, the format does not matter. The DHA gets there either way. Food 7. Blueberries. Blueberries are one of the most studied foods in cognitive research, and the findings are consistent enough that I am comfortable saying this directly. They are one of the best things you can put in your body for your brain. Here is the mechanism. Blueberries are extraordinarily rich in compounds called anthocyanins. These are the molecules that give them their deep blue-purple color. Anthocyanins cross the blood-brain barrier. Once inside, they do 2 things. They neutralize free radicals, the unstable molecules that damage brain cells, and they stimulate the production of a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of BDNF as fertilizer for brain cells. It supports the growth of new neurons. It strengthens connections between existing ones. A study from Tufts University gave blueberry extract to older adults for 12 weeks. The blueberry group showed measurable improvements in memory and learning compared to the placebo group. Not theoretical improvements, measured. Half a cup a day, fresh or frozen, both work. Add them to whatever you already eat in the morning. Food 8. Extra virgin olive oil. We talked about the oils that harm the brain. Now the oil that protects it. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal. Oleocanthal does something remarkable. It mimics the action of ibuprofen. It reduces inflammation, but without the side effects of a pharmaceutical. and without the cognitive risks we associate with long-term anti-inflammatory drug use. More specifically for the brain, oleocanthal has been shown in laboratory studies to help the brain clear amyloid proteins, the same toxic proteins that accumulate in Alzheimer's disease. It activates the brain's own cleaning mechanisms. A study from the University of the Aegean tracked older adults following a Mediterranean diet built around olive oil for years. They found that olive oil consumers had a 40% lower incidence of Alzheimer's disease compared to those who used little or none. 40% from one dietary staple, 2 to 3 tablespoons a day, on salads, drizzled on vegetables, used for light sautéing. Do not use it for very high heat cooking, it degrades, but for most daily cooking, it is without equal. Food 9. Walnuts. Walnuts look like a brain. This is not a coincidence, at least not a useless one. They are one of the richest plant sources of alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3. They contain melatonin, which, as we have discussed, protects sleep quality. And they contain an amino acid called L-arginine that relaxes blood vessels, improving blood flow to the brain. A UCLA study found that adults who regularly ate walnuts performed significantly better on cognitive tests than non-walnut eaters. The association held even after controlling for other dietary factors. But here is the finding that matters most for retention. Researchers found that walnut eaters showed lower levels of inflammatory markers in their blood, consistently, across multiple studies. Lower inflammation, better blood flow, more omega-3 for neuronal membranes, all from one small handful, about 30 grams a day, 14 halves, on their own as a snack, chopped over yogurt, or eaten before bed. Some evidence suggests the melatonin content makes them particularly useful in the evening. Food 10. Leafy green vegetables. Spinach, kale, Swiss chard, rocket, collard greens. I want to tell you about a study from Rush University, one of the largest nutritional neuroscience studies conducted in the United States. Researchers followed over 960 older adults for 5 years and tracked their diet in detail. They found that people who ate at least one serving of leafy greens every day had the cognitive age of someone 11 years younger than those who ate little or no greens. 11 years younger, not marginally sharper, 11 years. The researchers attributed this to a combination of nutrients, vitamin K, folate, beta-carotene, and lutein, that work together to reduce brain inflammation and protect neurons from oxidative damage. One serving a day, that is a handful of spinach in eggs, a side salad at lunch, a handful of rocket on whatever you are already eating for dinner. This is not an overhaul, it is a single addition. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you had a proper serving of leafy greens? Not as a garnish, as food. If you are not sure, that is your answer. Let us bring it together, because I do not want you to leave this video with a long list and no plan. 5 foods working against your brain right now. Refined vegetable oils, ultra-processed breakfast cereals, processed meats, margarine with trans fats, sugary drinks, including juice. 5 foods that research shows can actively rebuild it. Fatty fish twice a week, blueberries every day, extra virgin olive oil instead of the refined oils, a handful of walnuts daily, 1 serving of leafy greens at some point in your day. That is it. That is the whole picture. Now here is the most important thing I can tell you. You do not have to do all 10 at once. You do not have to overhaul your kitchen tonight. Research on habit formation is consistent about one thing. Small changes made consistently beat dramatic overhauls that collapse within a week. Pick one thing from each list. 1 food to remove, 1 food to add. Do those 2 things consistently for 30 days. Then add another. The brain responds to sustained change, not to a single perfect week. Go back to Carol for a moment. She did not do everything at once. She removed the cereal, She added blueberries. She switched her cooking oil. 3 changes, consistently, over 6 months. She came back and said the crossword felt easier again. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Food is something you choose 3 times a day, every single day. It is the most frequent decision you make about your health. And yet, it is almost never discussed specifically enough in a medical appointment to actually change what someone buys at the supermarket. That gap between what the research shows and what reaches the dinner table is why this channel exists. If this video gave you something useful, please share it. Think of one person in your life who eats cereal every morning and wonders why their thinking feels slower. Who cooks with vegetable oil because they were told it was the healthy choice 20 years ago. Send them this. That one share might be worth more than any supplement they are taking. Take care of that brain. Every single meal is either fighting for it or working against it. Now you know which is which. One final thing. Everything in this video is based on published peer-reviewed research and is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not medical advice. Do not make significant dietary changes without speaking to your doctor, especially if you are managing a chronic condition or taking medication that may be affected by diet. Bring this information to your next appointment. Have the conversation. Good medicine starts there.